The claiming was where you went when no one wanted you. And as Seren stood among the desperate women who had been passed over or discarded, unlike the others, she did not try to be seen. Heavy gloves concealed her hands completely, hiding the truth she could never reveal. The brand burned into her palm marked her as something dangerous, something forbidden. A beast caller whose gifts had been sealed away and whose touch had been declared heretical by the very kingdom that once celebrated her bloodline. So the crowd whispered, "What could be so terrible that she hides even her hands?" They were not wrong to wonder. Seren had learned long ago to brace herself for rejection. She would not be chosen if she concealed the brand. She would not survive if she exposed it. Then the beast arrived. It came before the Alpha King, as it always did. A massive creature of shadow and muscle, standing taller than any wolf, with eyes that burned like molten gold. The crowd scattered in terror. Women screamed. Guards drew weapons they knew would be useless. But Seren did not run. She walked toward it. And when she placed her gloved hand against its muzzle, when she whispered words no one else could hear, something extraordinary happened. Heat surged through her palm, a fire she had not felt since her binding, and the creature that had terrorized kingdoms for generations sank to its knees before her. The hall went silent. Then Alpha King Tavian arrived. He stood in the doorway, watching the impossible scene before him. The beast that shared his curse, the monster that answered to no command, was kneeling at the feet of a woman whose face he had never seen. He did not examine the other women. He did not ask questions. He simply walked to Seren and said, "I will take her." He would marry her, protect her, and give her everything she needed, but only under one condition. He would never love her. Neither of them understood how impossible that vow would become. The great hall of Valdrin had been transformed for the occasion. Tapestries covered the cold stone walls, and torches cast flickering light across the gathered crowd. But no amount of decoration could disguise what this place truly was: a market for the unwanted. The claiming happened once each season, when unmated wolves who had exhausted all other options came to offer themselves to whoever might take them. Second wives, servants, companions for elderly lords. The men who attended were not seeking love. They were seeking function. And the women who stood on the raised platform knew this. They had made their peace with it, or they were still trying to. Seren stood at the far end of the line, her hands clasped before her, heavy gloves covering her fingers and palms completely. The other women had dressed to attract attention. Bright colors, exposed skin, desperate smiles. Serene wore gray. She kept her head slightly bowed, her dark hair falling forward to shadow her features. She did not want to be seen. She could not afford to be seen. Not when her father stood near the edge of the platform, his eyes fixed on her with thinly veiled hatred. Lord Aldrich of House Vance had made his intentions clear. If no one claimed Seren today, he would exercise his legal right to sell her as a slave. It was meant to be his final punishment, the culmination of years of resentment toward the daughter who had shamed his bloodline. Her sister Marin stood beside him, beautiful in blue silk, carefully pretending not to know the woman on the platform. Seren did not blame her. Marin had her own survival to consider. The auctioneer droned through his introductions, listing bloodlines and qualities with practiced disinterest. A widow with 3 children. A woman scarred by fire. Another whose first husband had died under mysterious circumstances. Seren barely listened. She was calculating her odds, and they were not favorable. Who would choose a woman who hid her hands? What buyer would accept such an obvious sign that something was wrong? The answer, she knew, was no one. And when the claiming ended, her father would smile as the slavers took her away. Then the screaming started. It came from the great doors, a wave of terror rippling through the crowd as people scrambled backward, climbing over benches, shoving each other aside. Seren looked up and felt her blood turn to ice. The beast had arrived. It moved through the doorway like a nightmare given form. Larger than any wolf, its body rippled with muscle beneath fur that seemed to absorb the torchlight. Its eyes burned gold, ancient and hungry, and when it opened its mouth, the teeth that gleamed there were longer than daggers. Seren had heard stories about the Alpha King's beast. Everyone had. It was said to be immortal, a creature bound to the royal bloodline by magic so old no one remembered its origin. It was said to answer only to the king himself, and even then, not always. It was said to have killed men for coming too close. The beast stalked into the hall, and the crowd parted before it like water before a ship. Guards drew their swords but did not advance. They knew better. On the platform, the women scattered. The widow leaped from the edge, twisting her ankle as she landed. The scarred woman pressed herself against the far wall, trembling. Others simply ran, their desperate flight sending benches crashing and torches swaying. Seren did not move. She could feel it. Beneath the gloves, beneath the brand that had sealed her abilities, she could feel the echo of what she had once been. The beast was in pain. She did not know how she knew this. Her powers had been bound for 7 years, locked away behind the scar tissue of her father's magic. But something in her still recognized the suffering of a creature caught between worlds. The beast's golden eyes fixed on her. It began to move toward the platform, and Seren heard her father curse somewhere in the chaos. Good, she thought. Let him watch. Let him see that even bound and broken, she was still something he could never understand. The beast reached the platform's edge. It was close enough now that she could see the individual hairs of its fur, the way its muscles tensed beneath its hide. Close enough to smell the wildness radiating from its body, ancient forests and cold stone and something else. Something almost human. Seren pulled off her gloves. The brand on her right palm caught the torchlight, the sigil of binding that marked her as a sealed beast caller, a criminal whose gifts had been deemed too dangerous to exist. She did not care who saw it. Not anymore. She placed her bare hand against the beast's muzzle. Heat flared through her palm, so sudden and intense that she nearly gasped. The fire that had lived in her blood since childhood, the warmth that her father's seal had supposedly extinguished, roared to life beneath her skin. The creature went rigid. Its golden eyes widened, then slowly, impossibly, softened. And as the entire hall watched in stunned silence, the beast lowered its massive body to the ground and pressed its forehead against her feet in absolute submission. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then a voice cut through it, cold and clear and absolutely certain. I will take her. Seren looked up. The Alpha King stood in the doorway where his beast had entered, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things were beautiful. Sharp and still, and utterly without warmth. He was looking at Seren as if she were the answer to a question he had been asking his entire life. The carriage moved through the forest in silence. Seren sat rigid on the velvet seat, her hands folded in her lap, and the gloves back in place. Through the small window, she watched the trees pass in endless succession, their branches bare against the gray sky. She was trying very hard not to think about what had just happened. The beast had bowed to her. The king had chosen her. And now she was being taken to his castle for reasons she did not understand and could not begin to guess. Her father's face, as she was led away, had been almost worth the terror of everything else. Almost. The carriage stopped. A guard opened the door and offered his hand, his expression carefully neutral. Seren took it, stepping down onto cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of use. The castle rose before her, massive and ancient, its towers reaching toward clouds that threatened rain. It should have felt like a prison. Instead, to her surprise, it felt like sanctuary. No one here looked at her with hatred. The servants who passed bowed politely, their eyes curious but not cruel. No one spat at her feet or whispered murderer as she walked by. It was so different from her father's house that she felt dizzy. The guard led her through corridors lined with tapestries and suits of armor, past windows that overlooked gardens even now being prepared for winter. Finally, they stopped before a heavy oak door. The guard knocked twice, then pushed it open. "The king will see you now, my lady." Seren's throat went dry as she stepped inside. The room was a study, filled with books and maps and the smell of old paper. A fire burned low in the hearth despite the autumn chill, and standing before the window, backlit by gray afternoon light, was the Alpha King, Tavian. She knew his name from stories, from whispered rumors that painted him as everything from a saint to a monster. Looking at him now, she thought perhaps he was neither. He was simply cold. When he turned to face her, she felt that coldness like a physical force, as if winter lived in his bones and radiated outward to touch everything nearby. "Your Majesty," she said, dropping into a curtsy. "Rise." His voice was deep and controlled, empty of any warmth. Seren straightened, her heart hammering. She could not read his expression, could not smell any emotion in his scent, which should have been impossible. Wolves always betrayed something through scent, but the king smelled like nothing, like snow, like absence. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "Yes, Your Majesty." Seren steadied her voice. "I do not understand why you chose me. You calmed my beast. That is reason enough." "But surely," Seren began. He raised one hand, cutting her off. "You will be my wife. You will live in comfort. You will want for nothing. In exchange, you will remain near the beast when required. That is all you need to know." Seren stared at him, trying to process what she was hearing. He wanted her for the beast, not for herself, not for her bloodline or her abilities, but simply because his creature had responded to her. It should have felt insulting. Instead, it felt like relief. She would not need to pretend to be something she was not. She would not need to perform affection she did not feel or submit to desires she did not share. He simply wanted her presence, her usefulness. "I accept," she said. Tavian's expression flickered, something that might have been surprise or might have been suspicion. "You accept?" he repeated. "Yes." Seren met his gaze evenly. "You offer protection and comfort in exchange for a service I am capable of providing. Those terms are more than fair." For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then he nodded once. "The wedding will take place in 3 days. My staff will see to your needs until then." He turned back toward the window, dismissing her. "There is one more thing," he added, his voice dropping. "I will not love you. Do you understand? I will provide everything a wife could want, but love will never be among those provisions." Seren should have felt wounded. Instead, she felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had not known she was carrying. Cold over cruelty, she thought. "I will choose cold over cruelty every time." "I understand, Your Majesty," she said softly, "and I accept those terms as well." The council chamber was vast, its windows letting in weak morning light that did little to warm the stone. Seren had barely slept the night before. The rooms she had been given were larger than any space she had ever occupied, with a canopied bed and a fire that servants kept burning through the night. She had lain awake for hours, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the castle and wondering what she had agreed to. Now, walking into this chamber with guards flanking her, she forced herself to breathe steadily. Her father would be here. The contract required his signature as witness, and she would have to face him without flinching. "Lady Seren," a guard announced as she entered. Tavian sat at the head of a long table, 2 advisors flanking him. In the harsh morning light, he looked carved from marble, beautiful and just as unyielding. His eyes passed over her without interest, settling somewhere beyond her shoulder. And at the far end of the table, barely concealing his fury, sat Lord Aldrich. "Please sit," Tavian said, gesturing to a chair near him. Seren sat. Her father did not look at her, but she could feel his rage like heat from a fire. He had expected her to be refused, expected her to be returned to him in chains. Instead, she was about to become queen. One of the advisors cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, the marriage contract has been prepared according to your specifications. The terms are as follows." Tavian interrupted. "I will summarize." He picked up a document, barely glancing at it before setting it aside. His gaze found Seren, or at least found the space where she sat. "First and most important," he said, "you will remain available to attend the beast whenever required. It responds to you. I need to understand why. Second, you will give me an heir to secure the succession. Third, beyond these obligations, we will live separate lives. We will not share chambers. We will not dine together except at formal functions. We will appear as a united pair when politics demand it. And otherwise, we will have nothing to do with one another." Seren felt her father shift at the end of the table. "This is absurd," Aldrich burst out. "Your Majesty, you cannot possibly agree to these terms without knowing what she is, what she has done." "I was not speaking to you," Tavian said calmly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Seren watched her father's face go pale, watched him struggle to swallow his rage in the face of true power. "I was speaking to my future queen," Tavian continued. His eyes finally focused on Seren directly. "Is this agreeable to you?" She should have hesitated, should have asked for time to consider, for clarification, for something. Instead, she simply nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Your terms are more than generous." Aldrich made a sound of disgust. "You do not understand what you are agreeing to," he said through gritted teeth. "If you knew what was beneath those gloves, what that brand represents." "She is to be my wife." Tavian's voice cut through her father's protests like a blade through silk. "What she carries, what she has done, what secrets she hides beneath whatever garment she chooses, these things are none of your concern. Not anymore." Seren felt something warm bloom in her chest. No one had ever defended her before. Not once in her entire life. "Your Majesty," she said softly. "Thank you for your kindness." Tavian's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Kindness? You have offered me protection without requiring explanations. You have silenced questions I was not ready to answer." She met his gaze steadily. "That is kindness, whether you intended it or not." He studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind those storm-gray eyes. Then he looked away. "Sign the contract," he said. "We are finished here." The signing took only moments. Seren wrote her name in careful letters. Her father signed as witness, his hand shaking with barely suppressed rage. The advisors added their signatures, stealing glances at their king as if trying to understand what he was thinking. And then it was done. Seren was to be queen, wife to the most powerful alpha in the known world, bound to a man who had promised her everything except the one thing most wives expected. She was almost to the staircase leading to her chambers when someone stepped into her path. Marin stood before her, beautiful and cold, her blue eyes sharp with warning. "We need to talk," her sister said quietly. Seren followed her to an empty alcove overlooking the gardens. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marin broke the silence. "You can still refuse him, and return to father?" Seren almost laughed. "You know what he had planned for me. This is not safety, Seren." Marin's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "This is a different kind of cage. Do you think the king chose you out of kindness?" "He chose me because his beast bowed to me," Seren said. "I know exactly what I am to him. A tool, a convenience. And you are content with that?" I am content with survival. Marin's expression softened slightly, then hardened again. He will discover the truth eventually. About what you are. About what happened to Vesper. When he does. Seren's hands clenched inside her gloves. The brand on her palm seemed to burn. Vesper's death was not my doing, she whispered. My abilities were already sealed when he died. You know that. Do I? Marin's eyes searched her face. You were there that night. You were angry, and he died in a way that only a beast caller could have caused. The investigation found... Nothing, Seren interrupted. The investigation found nothing because there was nothing to find. Father needed someone to blame, and I was convenient. Marin stepped closer. The king seems willing to ignore your past for now. But when he learns that you were accused of murder, when he discovers that the beast responds to you because of forbidden magic sealed in your blood, he will destroy you, Seren, and there will be nothing I can do to stop him. Then she was gone, leaving Seren alone with the weight of her past and the terror of her future. The morning of the wedding arrived under heavy clouds. Seren stood before a mirror in her chambers, watching as servants adjusted the silver gown that had been made for her in just 3 days. It was beautiful, she supposed. Fine fabric and delicate embroidery, and all the things a bride should want. But the gloves remained. Heavy white silk that matched the dress, covering her hands completely, hiding the brand that would condemn her if anyone saw it. The cathedral was ancient, its spires reaching toward the gray sky like fingers grasping at something just out of reach. Seren walked alone through its great doors, no father to give her away. Aldrich had refused, claiming sudden illness, a final petty cruelty that she was grateful for. She did not want his hand on her arm, did not want his presence tainting whatever strange future awaited her. The pews were filled with nobility dressed in their finest silks and velvets. Every face turned toward her as she entered, whispers rustling through the crowd like wind through dead leaves. Who is she? Why does she wear those gloves? Surely the king could have chosen anyone. Why her? Seren kept her eyes fixed forward, on the altar where Tavian waited. He wore black, as she had somehow known he would. The color suited him, emphasizing the sharp lines of his face and the breadth of his shoulders. He looked like something carved from stone, beautiful and unyielding. Beside him, motionless as a shadow, stood the beast. Seren's breath caught. She had not expected it to be here, had not prepared herself for those golden eyes finding her across the length of the cathedral, tracking her approach with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The crowd had noticed too. She could hear the nervous shifting, the barely suppressed fear. The beast had never attended a royal function before. Its presence here was unprecedented. She reached the altar and took her place beside Tavian. Up close, she could see the faint tension in his jaw, the way his hands were clasped behind his back, with deliberate control. He was not as unaffected as he appeared. The priest began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the vast space. Seren barely heard the words. She was too aware of the beast's gaze on her back, of Tavian's presence beside her, of the weight of the gloves concealing her shame. Do you, Tavian, Alpha King of Valdrin, take this woman as your wife, your queen, your mate? The priest's voice trembled slightly. Clearly, he too was unnerved by the beast's proximity. I do. Tavian's response was flat, emotionless. And do you, Seren of House Vance, take this man as your husband, your king, your mate? I do. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. The priest nodded. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you bound in the eyes of gods and men. You may claim your bride, your majesty. The cathedral went silent. Everyone knew what came next, the traditional claiming bite, the mark that would seal them as mates. But that would require Tavian to touch her neck, to push aside fabric and press his mouth to her skin. It would require intimacy she was not prepared for. Not here. Not with hundreds watching. Tavian turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something other than coldness in his expression. It took her a moment to identify it. Uncertainty. He was unsure how to proceed without violating the distance he had promised to maintain. Serene made the decision for him. She extended her gloved hand, palm up, an offering. Tavian looked at her hand, then at her face, and something shifted in those gray eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or gratitude. He took her hand gently, raised it to his lips, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The crowd murmured in confusion and disappointment. This was not the claiming they had expected. But something loosened in Seren's chest despite the chill of his touch. He had honored her boundaries. In front of everyone, he had chosen to respect her limits rather than assert his rights. "Thank you," she whispered. Tavian said nothing, but he did not release her hand as they turned to face the crowd, and when they walked down the aisle together, his grip remained gentle but firm. Outside, the crowd that had gathered cheered despite their confusion. Their king had married a mystery, a woman whose face they barely knew and whose hands remained hidden even on her wedding day. But he was still their king, and they would celebrate regardless. The beast walked behind them, a massive shadow that made the crowd press back against the barriers, but Seren could feel its attention like a physical touch. It was not threatening. It was protective, as if it had decided that she belonged to it as much as she belonged to Tavian. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she had not felt in years: safe. The feast passed in a blur of food and wine and endless introductions to nobles whose names she would never remember. Tavian sat beside her, close enough to touch but maintaining careful distance. He spoke when required, ate when expected, played the role of king with practiced precision. But she noticed that he did not drink the wine, noticed that his eyes kept drifting toward the windows, where darkness was slowly falling. And she noticed that his hands, when they rested on the table, trembled almost imperceptibly. When the feast finally ended, when the last toast had been made and the final well-wisher had departed, Seren found herself standing outside the door to the royal chambers. Her chambers now, where her husband would join her to consummate their marriage. The door opened. A servant bowed. "The king awaits you, your majesty." The room was lit by candles, dozens of them, casting soft golden light across silk sheets and velvet curtains. A fire burned in the hearth, filling the space with warmth that Seren desperately needed. She had been cold all day, a chill that seemed to come from inside her bones. Now, standing in this room where her husband waited, she felt that cold intensify. Tavian stood by the window, his back to her. He had removed his formal jacket, leaving him in a white shirt with a loosened collar that revealed the strong lines of his neck. His hair was loose, falling past his collar in dark waves. He looked younger like this, more human. "You can leave your gloves on," he said, without turning. His voice was quiet, carefully controlled. "Whatever you wish to hide, you may continue hiding. I will not ask. I will not look." Seren's throat tightened. She had expected demands, expected him to assert his rights as husband and king. Instead, he was offering her the same consideration he had shown at the altar. Privacy, protection, distance. "Thank you," she managed. He turned then, and she saw that his eyes were different in the candlelight. Darker, with something moving behind them that she could not identify. "I should tell you," he said slowly, "that I am not." He paused, searching for words. "I am not able to be what most wives would want. I will perform my duty to produce an heir, but beyond that, I cannot offer warmth, cannot offer affection. My condition does not allow it." His condition. The phrase caught her attention. "What condition?" she asked before she could stop herself. Tavian's expression shuddered. "A family affliction," Nothing you need concern yourself with. He crossed to a table where a decanter of water sat beside two glasses. I will wear this, he said, withdrawing a strip of black silk from his pocket. If you prefer darkness, if you would rather I not see you, I will be blindfolded. Seren stared at the silk in his hands. He was offering to blind himself, to make himself vulnerable so that she could feel safe. The kindness of it struck her like a blow. You would do that? She whispered. I would do whatever is necessary to make this bearable for you, he said simply. We are bound together now. Your comfort matters to me, even if nothing else can. She crossed the room before she knew what she was doing, took the blindfold from his hands. Their fingers brushed, and she gasped at the cold of his skin. He was freezing. Even in this warm room, even beside the fire, his flesh was like ice. You are cold, she said. Always, he replied. It is part of the condition. Seren studied his face, seeing for the first time the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the slight pallor beneath his bronze skin. He was unwell. She had not noticed before, too distracted by his power and presence to see the signs of something wrong beneath the surface. Turn around, she said softly. She tied the blindfold carefully, her fingers lingering against his temples. Up close she could smell him beneath the coldness, pine and winter wind and something wild, something that reminded her of the beast. She reached past him and extinguished the last candle. Darkness fell over the room like a blanket, and Seren felt some of her fear ease. In darkness, she could be anyone, could be the woman he needed rather than the broken thing her father had made her. His hands found her shoulders, large and cold and impossibly gentle. May I? He asked. Yes. He undressed her slowly, his fingers finding the fastenings of her gown with careful precision. Each touch was deliberate, giving her time to refuse, to pull away. But she did not pull away. The gown fell, and she stood before him in nothing but her gloves. He did not try to remove them. His palms skimmed down her arms, across her waist, mapping her body with a tenderness she had not expected. When she reached for his shirt, he went still but did not stop her. She unfastened the remaining buttons with trembling fingers, pushing the fabric from his shoulders. His chest was broad and muscled, but what made her gasp was the texture. Beneath her fingers, his skin felt wrong, not just cold but rough in places, almost like fur, like something was growing beneath the surface, trying to emerge. What is this? She breathed. Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. Just scars. Old wounds. She knew he was lying, could hear it in his voice, feel it in the way his body tensed. But she did not press. He had given her privacy. She would give him the same. They came together slowly, carefully, two strangers learning each other's shapes in the darkness. He was gentle beyond anything she had imagined, checking constantly that she was comfortable, that she wanted to continue. And despite the cold of his skin, warmth began to build between them. The same fire she had felt when touching the beast flickered in her chest, spreading through her body like an answer to his ice. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathing hard. Tavian's arm was wrapped around her waist, and she could feel his heart beating against her back. It was faster than it should have been. Erratic. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For not being afraid of me. Before she could respond, a sound came from outside the chamber door. A low whine, animal and plaintive. The beast. Tavian went rigid. Ignore it, he said. But the whining continued, growing more insistent. Seren slipped from the bed, pulling a robe around her shoulders. She opened the door a crack, and there it was. The massive creature that had bowed to her in the great hall, sitting outside the royal chambers like a loyal hound waiting for its master. Its golden eyes met hers, and she felt that strange connection pulse between them, the echo of power that her brand could not quite suppress. Heat bloomed in her palm where the sigil was burned, and the beast pressed closer, drawn to the fire in her blood. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her palm against its muzzle. The beast pressed into her touch, making a sound that was almost a purr. Then it turned and padded down the corridor, settling at the far end where it could watch the door, guarding her. She closed the door and turned to find Tavian sitting up in bed, the blindfold pushed up onto his forehead. His eyes were wide, and in the faint light from the dying fire, she could see something that looked very much like fear. "It has never done that before," he said hoarsely. "Never guarded anyone, never waited outside a door." Seren climbed back into bed, pulling the covers up around them. "Perhaps it was simply curious," she offered. "No." His voice was strained. "It was not curious. It was devoted." He reached out and touched her face with cold fingers. "What are you?" he whispered. "I do not know," she answered honestly. "I do not know anymore." He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war in his eyes, the desire to know battling against the promise not to ask. Finally, he lay back down and pulled her against him. In the darkness, with the beast guarding their door, they slept. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Seren had ever experienced. Tavian came to her chambers every evening without fail. At first, it was simply duty, the air they had contracted to produce. But somewhere along the way, duty became something else. He began arriving earlier, staying later. Sometimes they would talk for hours before touching, sharing the burdens of their days in whispered conversations that felt more intimate than anything physical. He told her about the pressures of ruling, the endless demands of nobles and foreign dignitaries, the weight of a crown he had never wanted. She told him about her childhood, carefully edited to exclude the worst parts, the mother she had lost, the garden she had loved, the dreams she had abandoned long ago. The beast became a constant presence. It followed her through the castle during the day, padding silently at her heels like a shadow with golden eyes. Servants learned to step aside when she passed. Courtiers who had once whispered behind her back fell silent when the creature's gaze fell upon them. She was the queen the beast had chosen, and no one dared challenge that choice. 1 month became 2. 2 became 3. And slowly, Seren began to realize that she was falling in love with her husband. It happened in small moments. The way he would brush her hair back from her face after they made love. The way he listened when she spoke, as if her words were the most important thing in the world. The way he had the kitchen prepare her favorite foods without her ever asking, simply because he had noticed what she chose to eat. But as her love grew, so did her fear. Because Tavian was getting worse. The coldness that lived beneath his skin was spreading. Some nights, he would wake trembling violently, his body so cold that she feared he would freeze solid. Other nights, she would touch him and feel that strange roughness spreading across his back, his shoulders, and his chest, as if something was trying to claw its way out of him. She found him one morning standing before a mirror in his dressing room, shirtless, staring at his reflection with horror in his eyes. Dark patches covered his shoulder blades, not bruises, not scars, fur, the same color as the beast. "What is happening to you?" she demanded. He spun, grabbing a shirt to cover himself. "Nothing. A skin condition. It flares sometimes." "Tavian, stop lying to me." Her voice broke. "I am your wife. Whatever this is, whatever is wrong, you can tell me." For a moment she thought he would. His eyes met hers, and she saw the desperation there, the longing to share his burden. But then the walls came back up, and he turned away. "It is nothing you can help with," he said quietly. "Please, let it be." She let it be, but she did not stop watching, did not stop noticing the way he avoided mirrors, avoided bright light, and avoided any situation where others might see him without his armor of fine clothing and royal composure. 3 months after their wedding, Seren missed her monthly bleeding. She waited another week to be certain, then summoned the royal healer. The woman examined her with gentle hands and smiled. "You are with child, Your Majesty. Congratulations." That evening, Seren waited until Tavian had relaxed beside her, his cold body pressed against her warm one, before she told him, "I am pregnant." He went completely still. For a long moment, he did not speak, did not breathe, and did not move at all. Then his hand found her stomach in the darkness, pressing flat against her skin. "You are certain?" "Yes." The healer confirmed it today. A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Something in between that made her heart ache. "A child," he breathed. "We are having a child." The wonder in his voice was unmistakable. This was not just duty to him. This was joy. Pure, unguarded joy. She had never heard him sound like this before. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you, Seren." He pulled her closer, both hands now cradling her stomach as if the life within was already precious to him. She felt tears prick her eyes. This was everything she had not dared hope for. A husband who wanted their child, a future that held promise instead of pain. But beneath the joy, fear coiled in her chest. He has what he needs now, she thought. An heir. The contract is fulfilled. He will stop visiting, stop caring. Why would he continue when the purpose is fulfilled? The fear grew over the following days. Tavian seemed different, more attentive. Yes, but also more distant. He would touch her stomach with reverence, then pull away with something like guilt in his eyes. He came to her chambers still, but some nights he simply held her, making no move to do more, as if he was preparing to let her go. One night, unable to bear it any longer, Seren asked the question that had been tormenting her. "Will you stop visiting after the child is born?" Tavian looked at her, confusion furrowing his brow. "What? You said you wanted nothing to do with me beyond producing an heir." Her voice trembled despite her efforts to control it. "Now that I am pregnant, now that you have what you need, I assumed. Is that what you think?" He sat up, staring at her. "That I have simply been using you? Is it not true?" "No." The word came out fierce, almost angry. "It has not been true for months. I come to you because I cannot stay away. Because the hours between evening and morning feel endless without you. Because you are the only warmth in my entire frozen existence." Serene's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I am saying." He stopped, his expression twisting with something that looked like pain. "I am saying that I have broken my own rules, my own promises. I swore I would never love you, Seren. But I do. God's help me, I do." The confession hung between them, enormous and impossible. Seren felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "You love me?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "I love you. I love the way you speak to the beast as if it were a puppy. I love the way you thank the servants when no one else notices. I love the way you look at me as if I am something worth looking at, when I know what I truly am." He took her face in his cold hands. "I love you," he said again. "And I am terrified, because loving you might be the most dangerous thing I have ever done." "Why?" she whispered. "Why dangerous?" "Because of my—" He stopped mid-word. His eyes went wide. His hands flew to his chest, clawing at his shirt. "Tavian?" Seren grabbed his arms. "Tavian, what is wrong?" He could not answer. His whole body was convulsing, his skin going from cold to frigid to something beyond either. Frost began to form on his shoulders. Actual frost, crackling across his skin like ice spreading over a winter pond. His eyes rolled back in his head. "Tavian!" She screamed his name as he collapsed against her, his body rigid, his breath coming in shallow gasps that fogged in the suddenly frigid air. The door burst open. Guards rushed in, then stopped dead at the sight of their king seizing in his wife's arms, ice spreading across his body like a disease. "Get help!" Saren screamed. "Someone get help! He is dying!" But even as she said the words, even as servants scattered to find healers who could not help, Saren looked down at her husband's face and understood something terrible. This was not an illness. This was a curse. And his confession of love had triggered it. The healers came and went, their faces growing grimmer with each passing hour. None of them could explain what was happening. None of them could stop the frost spreading across the king's body like a slow-moving death. Seren sat beside his bed, clutching his ice-cold hand, watching the crystalline patterns creep up his neck toward his face. 3 days passed, then 4. The frost had consumed most of his torso now, turning his skin pale blue, making his breath come in shallow whispers that fogged the air. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid enough to speak, mostly lost in whatever icy nightmare held him captive. On the 5th day, his eyes opened and found her face. Seren. His voice was barely a whisper, cracked and weak. "I need to tell you. You need to rest." She squeezed his hand, feeling the ice beneath his skin. "Save your strength." "No." He struggled to sit up and failed. His hand gripped hers with desperate strength. "You need to understand. What is happening to me? Please." She leaned closer, her heart breaking at the pain in his eyes. "Tell me." "The curse," he breathed, "on my bloodline. Every king of Valdrin carries it. We are bound to the beast, not as masters, as hosts." Saren shook her head. "I do not understand. The beast is not a separate creature." His eyes closed briefly, then opened again with tremendous effort. "It is me, the darkness in me given form. It moves on instincts I cannot always control, drawn to what I desire even when my conscious mind resists. Every king before me has fought to keep it contained, to remain human. But the curse has a trigger." "What trigger?" "Love." The word came out like a confession, like a prayer, like a death sentence. If we ever truly love someone, the transformation completes. We become the beast forever. Our human selves are consumed. We lose everything. Everything except the hunger. Horror washed through her. "That is why you said you would never love me?" "Yes." He laughed bitterly, the sound turning into a cough. "I chose you because you were hidden. Because I thought I could never truly know someone I could not see. Could not love what I did not understand." His frost-covered fingers tightened on hers. "I was such a fool. I loved you before I ever saw your face. Loved your voice, your kindness, your courage. Loved the way the beast responded to you when it had never responded to anyone." Tears streamed down Seren's cheeks. "There must be a way to stop it. A cure. There is no cure." His voice was fading. Every king who fell in love completed the transformation. My father, my grandfather, all of them. The beast consumed them all. Then I will make you stop loving me. She said the words before she could think them through. I will make you hate me. That will reverse it. Seren, nothing you could do would make me. She pulled off her gloves. The brand on her palm caught the weak light filtering through the curtains. The sigil of binding, the mark of a sealed beast collar, burned angry red against her skin. Look, she demanded. Look at what I am. Tavian's eyes found the brand. His expression did not change. A beast collar, he said softly. I suspected. That is not all. Seren forced the words out. I was accused of murder. A man named Vesper, my sister's lover. He died by beast magic, and everyone believed I killed him. Did you? Tavian asked. No, but I cannot prove it. I was there. I was angry. And my abilities, even sealed, might have. She choked on the words. I might be a murderer, Tavian. I might have killed him without even knowing. Does that disgust you? Does that make you hate me? He reached up with trembling, ice-bound fingers and touched her face. You beautiful, impossible woman, he whispered. Do you think I care about a brand? About accusations? I have watched you for months. I have seen your gentleness with servants, your patience with courtiers, your kindness to everyone you meet. Whatever happened that night, I know it was not murder. I know your heart, and I love it more with every breath I take. No. Seren shook her head desperately. No, you have to stop. You have to hate me. I cannot. His smile was sad, accepting. I could not stop loving you if you put a blade through my heart. You are everything, Seren. Everything I never knew I wanted. Everything I never dared to hope for. His eyes began to close. The frost crept higher, spreading across his jaw, touching his lips. You have to find the beast, he managed. When the transformation completes, when I am gone, it will still remember you. It will still bow to you. Keep it calm. Keep it contained. Do not let it hurt anyone. You are not going to die. Seren gripped his shoulders. Do you hear me? I will not let you die. Find a beast caller, he breathed. The old magic. Fire against ice. The beast carries memories of those who came before. It knows. Find someone who can reach the fire in your blood. Find someone who can call me back. His voice faded. His eyes closed. The frost sealed over his face, and Alpha King Tavian of Valdrin went still. Seren screamed his name, pounded on his rigid chest. But he did not respond. Did not move. Did not breathe. She collapsed against him, sobbing, and her tears freezing where they fell on his icy skin. The beast found her there. It came through the door that servants had left open in their panic, its massive body filling the chamber with shadow. It approached the bed where its other half lay encased in ice, and let out a sound that broke what remained of Seren's heart. A howl of grief so profound that the castle walls themselves seemed to tremble. Then it turned to her. Its golden eyes met hers, and in them she saw something she had never seen before. Recognition, pleading, hope. Find the fire in your blood, it seemed to say. You are the only one who can reach him. And Seren understood. The beast was not asking her to find another beast caller. It was asking her to use her own power. The power sealed beneath the brand on her palm, the power that had been locked away for years. She looked at her hand, at the sigil that had defined her as dangerous, as criminal, as something to be contained. Her father had sealed her abilities. Her father held the key to unsealing them. She would have to go back. The ride to her father's estate took half a day. Seren pushed her horse to its limits, ignoring the burning in her muscles and the exhaustion that threatened to drag her from the saddle. Every moment she was gone was a moment Tavian slipped further away. The beast ran beside her, keeping pace with supernatural ease. It had refused to stay behind, and she had not tried to force it. Perhaps it knew what she was about to face. Perhaps it wanted to be there when she confronted the man who had destroyed her life. The Vance estate rose before her as the sun began to set. She dismounted at the gates and strode toward the entrance, guards scrambling to get out of her way. The beast followed, and their eyes went wide with terror. My lady, one of them stammered, your father is not receiving visitors. He will receive his queen, Seren said coldly. She pushed past them into the main hall. Lord Aldrich stood by the fireplace, a glass of wine in his hand. When he saw her, his face twisted with familiar disgust. But when he saw the beast padding through his door, the disgust turned to fear. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. I need you to release my binding, Seren said. The seal you placed on my abilities. Remove it. Now. Aldrich laughed, though his eyes kept darting to the beast. Why would I do that? You are a danger. A criminal. I bound you to protect the world from what you are. The king is dying. Seren stepped closer. The only thing that can save him is beast caller magic. My magic. The fire in my blood that you tried to extinguish. Release the seal, or I will have my husband's beast tear this house apart stone by stone. Her father's expression flickered. Dying, you say? The Alpha King is dying? Yes. And only I can save him. So release the binding. For a long moment, Aldrich said nothing. Then a slow smile spread across his face. No. Marin appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Father, what are you doing? She said the king is... I heard what she said. Aldrich's smile widened. And I see an opportunity. If the king dies, if the beast consumes him completely, the throne will be empty. And who better to fill it than the father of the widowed queen? You would let him die, Seren breathed. You would let an innocent man die for your own ambition. Innocent? Aldrich laughed. He is a monster, girl. The beast proves it. When he is gone, when you are a grieving widow with no protector, you will finally be useful to me. I will arrange a new marriage. Someone I choose. Someone whose power will benefit our house. The beast growled, a low rumble that shook the windows. Aldrich took a step back, but his smile did not waver. You will not set that creature on me, he said. You are too soft. Too weak. Just like your mother. Do not speak of my mother. Seren's voice shook with rage. You drove her away, blamed her for magic that came from your own bloodline. Your bloodline? Aldrich's smile faltered. What nonsense is this? Grandmother, Seren said. Your mother. She was a beast caller, was she not? Silence crashed over the room. Marin's hand flew to her mouth. Aldrich's face went white. How did you... When my power started breaking through the seal, when the fire began to answer my call again, I felt the truth in my own blood. Seren stepped closer to her father. Your mother had the gift. Your father discovered it and had her executed. But the magic passed to you, father. And from you to me. That is why you knew how to bind me. That is why you understood the sigils. Because you carry the same fire in your veins. Lies. Aldrich's voice was strangled. All lies. Then why did you bind me before Vesper died? Seren watched her father's face crumble. My powers manifested when I was 13. You sealed them that same week. But Vesper's death happened 4 years later. How did I kill him with abilities that had already been locked away? Marin stepped forward, her eyes wide. Father, is this true? You sealed her before Vesper. I had to. Aldrich's composure cracked completely. Your grandmother's magic was an abomination. When I saw it in Seren, I knew it had to be contained. But the seal, you said she killed Vesper with her powers. She could not have, Marin said slowly, if she was already bound. Exactly. Seren turned to her sister. So who did kill him? Who else in this family carries beast-caller blood? Who else had the ability? Both women looked at their father. Aldrich's face contorted with rage and fear, and something that might have been shame. He was going to take you away, he snarled at Marin. That common soldier, that worthless nobody, was going to steal my daughter and ruin everything I had planned for this family. You killed him. Marin's voice was barely a whisper. You killed Vesper. I did what was necessary. Aldrich straightened, defiant even now. My powers were never bound like yours, Seren. Father never suspected me. I learned to use them in secret, and I used them to protect this family. And I blamed you because you were already marked. Already suspect. 2 problems solved with 1 fire. The beast lunged. It happened so fast that Seren barely saw it move. One moment Aldrich was standing by the fireplace. The next he was on the ground, the creature's massive paw pinning him to the stone floor. "Do not kill him," Seren commanded. The beast paused, golden eyes meeting hers. "Not yet. First, he will release my seal." "Never," Aldrich spat. "I would rather die." "Then die slowly." Seren knelt beside him. "Because that beast will not give you a quick end. It will tear you apart piece by piece while I watch. And when you are finally gone, I will find the seal myself and break it without your help. But you will not be alive to see what happens next." Fear finally broke through Aldrich's defiance. "The seal," he gasped. "The box in my study. Third drawer. The key is around my neck." Marin moved before Seren could. She tore the key from their father's throat and ran. Minutes later, she returned breathless, pressing a small iron box into Seren's hands. Inside was a crystal sphere pulsing with sickly green light. Seren's sealed power, trapped for over a decade. She took the sphere in her hands. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the brand on her palm began to glow, heating until it felt like her skin was on fire. She did not let go. The sphere cracked. The green light exploded outward, and Seren screamed as power flooded back into her body. Every nerve, every muscle, every cell blazed with abilities she had almost forgotten she possessed. The fire that had always lived in her blood roared back to life like an inferno breaking free of its cage. The connection to beasts, to the wild magic that lived in all creatures, burned through her with devastating intensity. She opened her eyes. The beast was staring at her with something like awe, and for the first time, she could truly feel it. Feel him. Tavian's consciousness, trapped inside the creature, fighting to survive against the curse that was consuming him. "Hold on," she breathed. "I am coming." She turned to Marin. "Keep father here, have him arrested. I will send guards when I return." Marin nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Seren, I am so sorry. I believed him. I blamed you for years." "I know." Seren touched her sister's cheek. "We will talk when this is over. But right now, I have to save my husband." She ran for her horse. The beast ran beside her. And as the moon rose over Valdrin, Seren rode toward the castle with fire in her blood and hope in her heart. Epilogue. Nearly a year later, Seren stood in the courtyard where it had all begun. The claiming platform had been torn down, its wood repurposed for the new academy of beast speakers that was rising on the castle grounds. There would be no more auctions. No more women treated as livestock. Tavian had abolished the practice on his first day back on the throne. She still remembered that moment. Racing into his chamber, her newly freed power blazing through her veins. Finding him encased in ice, barely a spark of life remaining. She had placed her hands on his chest, closed her eyes, and reached. The beast caller fire answered. Not just hers, but the creature's too, both halves of Tavian's curse responding to her call. She had poured flame into his frozen body, calling to the man trapped beneath the ice, calling him home. For hours, she had burned. For hours, he had remained frozen. And then, just as dawn broke through the windows, the ice had cracked. He had gasped back to life like a drowning man breaking the surface. His eyes had opened, warm gray instead of winter cold, and the first word he had spoken was her name. The curse was broken. Not just held at bay, but truly destroyed. Her beast collar fire had burned through the ancient magic that had plagued his bloodline for generations. The beast remained, but it was no longer a prison. It was simply part of him, wild and powerful and completely under his control. "Your Majesty." The voice pulled her from her memories. Marin stood beside her, elegant in the council robes she had earned through months of work and dedication. "Your husband requests your presence in the gardens. He says your son wishes to see you." Seren smiled. "Lead the way." The gardens were in full bloom, spring flowers cascading across trellises and pathways. And there, sitting on a blanket beneath an ancient oak, was her family. Tavian held their son in his arms, the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around one of his father's. Beside them, stretched out in the dappled sunlight, was the beast. It lifted its massive head as Seren approached, tail thumping against the ground in greeting. She knelt beside her husband and took her son from his arms. Little Callan, barely 3 months old, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. He gurgled happily at the sight of her. "You look content," Tavian observed. "I am content." Seren settled against his side, their son between them. "For the first time in my life, I am truly content." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You saved me," he murmured. "In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other." She looked at the beast, which had crawled closer to rest its massive head near the baby's blanket. "You were as lost as I was. Both of us hiding. Both of us convinced we were monsters. And we were both wrong." The beast made a sound that might have been agreement. Callan reached out with a chubby hand and grabbed a fistful of its fur. The creature that had once terrified entire kingdoms simply sighed and closed its eyes, content to serve as a pillow for the prince. "Marin joined the council officially today," Seren mentioned. She presented her proposal for reformed inheritance laws. It passed unanimously. Tavian nodded. "Your sister has become a formidable politician." "She learned from watching our father," Seren said. "What not to do." Aldrich remained in the dungeon, convicted of murder and treason. He would spend the rest of his life there, stripped of titles and lands, forced to confront what he had done. Marin had testified against him without hesitation. So had a dozen servants who had witnessed his cruelties over the years. Justice had been thorough. "What are you thinking about?" Tavian asked softly. "The claiming," Seren admitted. "Standing there in my gloves, certain no one would want me. Certain I would end up a slave." He pulled her closer. "I wanted you from the moment I saw the beast bow at your feet. I just did not understand what that wanting meant. And now I understand everything." He tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. "I love you, Seren. I love our son. I love the life we have built from the ashes of our curses." She kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting the warmth that had replaced his winter coldness. When she pulled back, the beast was watching them with something that looked very much like satisfaction. "It approves," Tavian observed dryly. "It should." Seren scratched behind the creature's ears. "We are its favorite humans." They sat together as the afternoon faded into evening, king and queen and prince and beast, a family forged from impossibility. The woman who had hidden her hands and the man who had hidden his heart. The beast caller, who thought her gift was a curse, and the king, who thought love meant death. They had found each other in the darkness, and together, they had stepped into the light.